Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, your home for Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. I'm your host, Nick Belsky, joined as always by Nick Horwat. We have a fantastic show for you guys today. First and foremost, we're going to lead this discussion off by talking about a new member of the Penguins that is just simply turning heads since he made his Pens debut a couple of weeks ago. Then we'll debate which AHL standouts could start next season with the big club, and we'll close things out looking back at the last time the Penguins played in Sweden and talking about which player from those rosters could help the most if they came back and were just dropped into today's team. Let's get started on the Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Let's kick things off with a player that has made a good first impression. I think that's fair to say. And that is Pittsburgh Penguins defenseman Vladislav Kolyachonok. He's only played 7 games as a member of the Pens, but most of them have been with Kris Letang, playing over 20 minutes a night, something that he hadn't really done before in his career before he came to Pittsburgh. Has 2 assists in those 7 games. And if you look at his underlying numbers, they're decent. It's nothing to call home about, but it's also nothing that is going to severely dampen the spirits of anybody who's excited about this player. He was benched on Tuesday, which we can talk about that briefly. He was benched in the 3rd period of Tuesday's game, but I really didn't see a reason for that. I understand Mike Sullivan wasn't happy whenever the Islanders scored a goal in the 1st minute of that 3rd period, but that was more so on his veteran star players. Kolyachonok was part of the rush on that play. The puck came around quick. Letang misplayed it, and Crosby didn't backfill for Vlad Kolyachonok. So again, this is a kid who in 7 games, it's not perfect, but he's certainly giving off, at least to me, some pretty good first impressions. Horwat, what have your first impressions been of this defenseman?
So far, so good. You can't complain about most things. He's getting put into, he's getting thrown into the deep end pretty automatically, or just right away. Getting put into those positions because you come in, I think you played 1 or 2 games before it was, all right, you're going up next to Kris Letang. You're going to play first line minutes. You're going to play 20 minutes a night, which isn't something he, obviously, like you said, has ever done before at the NHL level. It's a new situation. It's just a little bit of a jump scare almost. You're here and boom, all of a sudden you're in the first line. Good luck. Have at it. I mean, this team isn't going anywhere, so it is very much the what do you have to lose by doing that? Mm-hmm. But if anything, it is getting him good reps, getting him good minutes, letting him learn the system for next season. As for the benching, I mean,
I thought he was injured. I was surprised that I was like, who's not out there? Because I saw Connor Timmins and Ryan Graves alongside of Kris Letang, and I saw Grzelcyk was bounced around a little bit, and I was like, why is Kolyachonok not out there? I thought he was injured. I was surprised to hear that he was just chilling on the bench.
It very much could have just been, Sullivan trying to give the veterans their chance to not let the game slip away, or to let the veterans be the ones that crawl back into it because they're the ones that have been around. They're the ones that know this, but you have to remember, it's the Islanders. This is just how it goes. You'll go up by a couple, and the 3rd period happens. I don't know how much of a difference Kolyachonok would have made on the ice or off the ice anyway. So, because this team is what it is. It's kind of a disaster, but you weren't going to win every game. Like we talked about last episode, you weren't going to put up the 10-game win streak just to maybe get back in the race. But as for Kolyachonok, it's about just building him up, learning the system, and getting ready for next season because he's someone that is going to be under contract, and will likely have an NHL role because who knows what this defense looks like after whatever moves Kyle Dubas decides to make this offseason.
Yeah, you mentioned next season. That's where I want to go next with this discussion is where do you think he slots in next season? Now, of course, we're going to talk about this in the second segment as well, but you have to understand that there's a long time between now and next year's training camp. And there's a chance that there's a lot of turnover between now and next year's training camp. We have a whole offseason to go. But as it stands today, where do you slot him in? Because right now, obviously, P.O. Joseph's on the shelf. Ryan Shea's on the shelf, and both of them have taken up that space that Kolyachonok has played in. Plus, let's not forget, Marcus Pettersson was traded away and never replaced, and there's a chance that they go out and do that. So there's a chance there's a couple of other players that are brought into this equation. But as it stands right now, where do you slot him in this lineup?
I think I'm slotting him in on the third pairing, just at the NHL level. I'm not worried about sending him to the minors to start. I think he may have what it takes to be an NHL regular. I mean, he's already proving to be decent enough in first-line minutes. Maybe sitting him down into a more proper role for his age and for his skill set. Maybe he progresses past it as the season goes on. He's still very fresh. It's tough to, like you said, 7 games that we've really had real eyes on him. It's tough to kind of narrow down what kind of player he is. And even through his career, I mean, he's, 23, got 69 career games under his belt, 14 points. So like the offensive numbers aren't necessarily there. You have to hamper a lot of it with it being Arizona for most of it. So take everything you hear about previous to Penguins numbers with a grain of salt. But I mean, he's also nearing the most games he's played in a single season.
Yeah, he's 2 away.
He's 2 back of, whenever he was 20, he played 32 with Arizona in 21-22, and he's at 30. He's going to have that sort of stability as well. So maybe there's a bit more of a confidence boost, and you're going to be starting the year at the NHL level. You're likely going to have a chance to play 82. Something about settling in with an NHL team is it's reassuring. It maybe breeds something new within him. I'm excited to see what he can do in the future. Again, this season is kind of not necessarily a throwaway. It is a learning curve, but the Penguins have nothing to lose, and it's going to be, all go next year for a ton of guys, including him.
Yeah, it's information gathering time for the Penguins. What do they have in a lot of these players? And Kolyachonok is going to be one of the ones that are at least catching the eye of management a lot, considering he's one that, is going to have to earn his way onto the roster next year. I mean, who knows what happens when Ryan Shea comes back? Does he get back into the lineup? I mean, Shea played, I think, 2 or 3 games alongside Letang, got a contract extension and got injured. So what does it look like when he comes back into the lineup? How does everything shift around? That remains to be seen. But as far as next season is concerned, the way I look at this is twofold. If the Penguins are attempting to turn a corner, and Kyle Dubas alluded to it a little bit in his deadline day presser, then he's a third pairing guy. I think him and Connor Timmins are a solid combo that you can put down on the third pairing. And I think that brings, as far as both of them, that brings all the skill sets you want. Timmins brings that physicality. Kolyachonok brings that offensive puck-moving ability. I mean, the skating is the thing with Kolyachonok that jumps off of the page, jumps off of the screen, and it just hits you right in the face. The kid is a smooth skater. He's got a lot of speed, but he also has a really good stick in the defensive zone. He can't really utilize his body. He's not the biggest guy, but I've noticed a lot that he is able to separate body from puck simply by utilizing his stick. It's what we say about about Erik Karlsson, that, yeah, he's not the greatest defender, but when he wants to be, he has a good stick. He can shut things down. He doesn't allow passes to get across. I've noticed hints of that in Kolyachonok's game as well. And then he gets pucks on net. So everything that he brings, matched with Connor Timmins' physicality and his ability to clear out the net front, I think that's a solid third pairing if you're going into next season for the Penguins. Now, that is if you're trying to turn the corner, which means you're backfilling where Marcus Pettersson was. You're bringing in guys at the top of the lineup. If it's a repeat of this year, where they're going to say, we're not necessarily going to sign someone and pay someone to come in and be the next Marcus Pettersson, then I have no issue keeping him in the top 4. A lot of that is going to be determined on the fate of Erik Karlsson, because as we know, Karlsson can only play with so many players. We've seen it work with 2 players in 2 years, Marcus Pettersson and Matt Grzelcyk, and that's it. So do you throw him with Erik Karlsson? That is a huge question. But if it's a repeat of this year where they're simply saying, yeah, we want to get better, but we're not going to make a active effort to bring in top players, then yeah, I could see him being a top 4 guy next year. Let him learn, let him take his lumps. He's going to hit speed bumps, but he's hit speed bumps in these 7 games and he's handled himself well. So I think this is a guy that can play up and down your lineup next year as well, depending upon what the direction of the Penguins as an organization is going into the 2025-26 season.
No kidding. It's all going to depend on the direction of the organization, the direction of the signings, the trades, however Kyle Dubas decides to build the team next year. We could be having this discussion now, and then by the first week of, let's say, free agency, or even right after the draft, it's all right. Well, now we have this new look. Suddenly, a conversation about Kolyachonok is completely different. Who knows? I mean, the Penguins like what they see so far, it seems, but I mean, it's also not necessary that he's safe here. Who knows what kind of changes this organization wants to make, to go into next year or the years in the years down the line. He's young and he fits that mold of down the line. But if Kyle Dubas believes there are better options for down the line, then he's going to go get them.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened with Cody Glass. The Penguins very, very much so liked what they had in Cody Glass, a young player that was starting to find his game in Pittsburgh a little bit, but there was trade value, and it made sense for them to move him and Jonathan Gruden and get back 2 prospects and a draft pick. So maybe that's the fate of Vlad Kolyachonok. I think that's what we know about the Penguins is right now, everything is so up in the air, anything can change. I mean, as you mentioned, if July 1st rolls around, and it's 2:00 in the afternoon, the Penguins announced that they signed Vladislav Gavrikov to a 7-year deal, then I think it changes what we're going to look at with guys like Kolyachonok, guys like Owen Pickering, guys like Ryan Graves. It changes everything if they decide, hey, we're going to go out and we're going to take some big swings on some big name free agents to fill those spots on the left side of the defense. But as it stands right now, he is one of their better options on the left side. So we're going to treat it as such and keep our eye on Vladislav Kolyachonok. Now, we're going to have a similar discussion here, but mainly about players that aren't at the NHL level. The AHL Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins have had an impressive season, and because of that, we look at a lot of their players and realize that they've had a lot of impressive performers as well. Wilkes-Barre is 33-17-8, which technically in AHL terms, because they separate overtime losses from losses, they are 33-17-7-1 because they have 1 shootout loss, but they are second in the Atlantic Division, only to the back-to-back champion Hershey Bears. With 14 games remaining, their magic number is 6 to clinch a playoff spot for the 2nd consecutive season. But today, we're going to talk a little bit more about next year for some of these young players. How many of them have a realistic shot to make the Penguins roster out of training camp? Last year, we had a surprise in Rutger McGroarty. He made the roster, played, I believe it was 2 games or 3 games, something like that, before being sent down. Harrison Brunick was getting real close. He stuck around real late in training camp before being sent back to the WHL. As it stands now, which we had the same conversation in the first segment, but as it stands now, how many of these players do you think have a realistic shot to make that roster next year?
I would say there's quite a few. There's quite a couple. Ranging from the high-skilled young guys like the Rutger McGroarty and maybe even the Tristan Bros, depending, to a bit more of a depth option. Maybe Sam Poulin finally gets the chance. Again, that would depend a lot on the kind of moves Kyle Dubas makes. If it comes down to he's just here to be the depth player and his chances have kind of run dry, but the Penguins need to fill holes. That's sort of where the Sam Poulin would fill in. But I could see quite a few. Like I said, a big range from the offense to the defense. The goaltending could be questionable. Who knows? But there's a large range of players. I say there's quite a few. Are we going to start diving into it? Like the names and the numbers? There's going to be quite a few. I want to hear what you got first.
Yeah, I think there's realistically 3. And of the 3, I don't have any goaltenders, simply because I have no idea what's happening at the NHL level. And because there's 3 of them that could make a case. I mean, Murashov, it's a little early, but the way he's performing, it's hard to continue to put roadblocks in front of a guy that's just bursting through them like the Kool-Aid man. Yeah. But the way I look at this, there's 3 names, and it all starts with Owen Pickering because he's the guy we've seen the most of. And he's the guy who, as we talked about with Kolyachonok, that left side has a lot of question marks from first pairing to third pairing to 7th defenseman. There's a lot of question marks on the Penguins' defensive side of the ice. Owen Pickering acquitted himself well in that first stint. A lot of people forget he played in 25 games. That's over a quarter of the season that he played NHL hockey. He was up and down the lineup. He didn't back down. He is somebody who can use his size and his reach to his advantage, and he was willing to do that in his first stint at the NHL level. That's a guy that I think, honestly, coming into next season, unless, like we mentioned, they go out and get like a Gavrikov on the first day of free agency, That's a guy that's probably going to be a leader in the clubhouse for one of the roster spots as camp opens in Cranberry next fall.
For sure. I think Owen Pickering's definitely among that list as well, especially when it comes to the defense. He might be the only one out of the defensive side of things. I know guys are taking steps forward, but defense is hard to fill, especially when you look at the contracts at the NHL level. Who knows if anyone's going to take Ryan Graves off their hands? Who knows what they do with Matt Grzelcyk? I know we had that discussion before.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be hard to just take NHL spots right now. Pickering has earned one before and will likely earn one again. And I don't see too many other names making that fight next season, especially considering a lot of them. I mean, really, aside from Pickering, no one here really made that jump this year. I mean, Ryan Shea, but I mean, he played a ton last year.
Mm-hmm.
No one really made the case outside of Pickering from the A to the NHL this year.
Now, I know there's a couple of defensemen down in the AHL that the Penguins are high on. They're guys that have come in this season and have kind of made huge impacts, even though people that only watch the NHL product are probably unaware of them. Names like Philip Kral, who's on the left side, names like Mac Hollowell, who's on the right side, names like Nathan Klerman, who's on the right side. These are all players that I think the organization has brought in and been pleased with at the American Hockey League level, but I'm not sure they're ready to make the jump to the NHL. They're not the top prospects in the American Hockey League. They're not the top prospects in the Penguin system. When you look at the Penguins' top defensemen in their prospect pool, it's Owen Pickering, and it's a lot of guys that are a little further out. Yep. Emil Pieniemi, who might make his pro debut next season with the Wilkes-Barre. I'm trying to remember. I think he might have played pro hockey in Europe before that, but I digress. He's playing OHL hockey now, but he's had a good season. Guys like Harrison Brunick, he's a little bit further off. Guys like Finn Harding, who was a 7th-round pick last year and having a great year in the OHL with the Brampton Steelheads. He's a little bit further off. So these aren't guys that, unless they come in and, again, Harrison Brunick almost did it last year. He almost did it. And if Erik Karlsson wasn't ready for the season, Harrison Brunick would have played a handful of games at the NHL level. So unless they come in and have that type of camp, it feels like the only guy that the door is open for is Owen Pickering on the blue line.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
build your way there, especially with some of those guys that going into the season, I can remember saying keep a close eye on guys like Philip Kral, Mac Hollowell, and Sebastian Aho until he fell off a cliff. Just because they are Kyle Dubas guys, and if injuries pile up or if things go south for the defense, those are names that Kyle has familiarity with, and they have NHL experience. Now, it hasn't worked out, and they only signed one-year deals, so going into next season might be a bit more of a question mark, but they ended up never getting their chance anyway. So if they return, then it'll probably be the same situation, starting in the A and then working their way up, but really needing to find the holes to open up for them. There's nothing wrong with it just being Pickering, especially whenever the pool of names is smaller, because let's be honest, the Penguins are kind of living and dying by forward prospects right now for the future.
Well, let's talk about some forward prospects. I have 2 of them that I would say I would put as players that have a realistic shot. Now, I could also throw in a third name in Vasily Ponomarev, but I'm questioning what the path is for him. He is a center. Now, he can play wing, but he is a center. And I look at the center ice position with the Penguins right now, and they have a lot of options. Tommy Novak is injured, but he is a guy that could play third-line center for the Penguins going into next season. Blake Lizotte is also under contract for next year, and he's having a really solid stretch of games here. Kevin Hayes is, as of right now, planning to be on the roster. So you already have 3 guys there. You can add in Achari if he ends up being back. You can add in a couple other names as well. So that's a name in Vasily Ponomarev where, yes, I think it's realistic, but there's just more hurdles in his way. Whereas at the wing position, I look at 2 names, and I think you know where I'm going with, and I think most people listening to this know where I'm going with, in Rutger McGroarty, who is the Penguins' top prospect, and he's starting to act like it, right? I mean, he's always acted like it, but he's starting to play like it at the AHL level. He's come on really strong as the season has gone on. He has 38 points in 56 games, and as everybody always mentioned with Rutger, he has the body, he has the physicality, he has the style of play that is going to translate to the NHL. The guy is 6'1", over 200 pounds, and he's a big body. Now, his skating is something that is still a work in progress, but he's proven that he can make up for it in other areas at the AHL level. The question is going to be, can he do it at the NHL level? But during preseason, it's much easier to make that statement that it is once you get there. So I think Rutger McGroarty has a chance. And of course, the other name is when the Penguins are as needy as they are for guys that can fill the back of the net on a consistent basis, bringing in the guy who's 6th in the AHL in scoring as a rookie, that'll help. And that name is Ville Koivunen.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. Like those two for sure. I think Rutger McGroarty was at the top of everybody's list when it came to this sort of thing. Mostly because he got his attempt this year. Yeah, they brought him in and immediately, like, all right, here, take your runs, take your NHL chance that you wanted in Winnipeg. Go ahead. Maybe he also realized, not yet. Maybe I should have been smarter in Winnipeg, and was going to be given a big role in the AHL and has lived up to the hype. And you're right, when it comes to Koivunen, maybe they give him a little more time to stew just because he's young and really is just getting used to the organization. However, those numbers are great. Those numbers are unreal. That is something to watch and to keep an eye on. I like that choice as well. Those two would be on my list. I might even say Ponomarev as well, but again, it does depend on what direction Kyle Dubas takes the team this offseason. Because like I mentioned, I would say Sam Poulin somewhere on this list. Just somewhere. It's tough to be on it, but it just depends on the depth of the team come cuts.
Yeah.
Come training camp.
It sucks to say, but it feels like he's going the way of Nathan Legare. It feels like he's going the way of Jonathan Gruden, where he had his chances and he's just been passed up from some of these other guys. And considering, like, I mean, is Danton Heinen going to block a guy like Ville Koivunen? Like, is there a chance that he blocks somebody if that they go with the veteran instead? Because the Penguins have shown that they're willing to be very patient with these prospects as of right now, because they don't have a lot and they need them to hit. So they need to make sure that they develop them to where they're ready. So there's a chance that we get to the beginning of next season and the team's like, no, we want to be more patient. But I think that if these guys are going to have an opportunity, it's still going to be more so Rutger, more so Ville, more so Vasily, even Tristan Brose. You know, I'm not saying that he's going to be a completed product. None of these guys are going to be a completed product at the age of 23. That just doesn't happen. You know, not everybody's Sidney Crosby, who's a complete hockey player at 18 years old. But I think that Sam Poulin is somebody who, some of it of his own doing and his own development, some of it just simply because of situation. It feels like he has almost run out of options with the Penguins, and a fresh start is what would be best for him, because right now it feels like he's an AHL guy. He is a bottom sixer right now on that lineup. And it feels like he's just been passed up by too many players, and players that we're saying might need everything to go right for them to make the roster next year. If he's lower down that list, it's going to be tough. It's going to be real tough.
Yeah, it is. It's going to be tough. And I have one more name that it's also going to be tough, but I'm genuinely so curious where he stands with this organization. He has another year left, so signing a deal isn't going to be an issue at all. But Valtteri Puustinen, who had a ton of NHL time last year, I thought deserved a bit more this year to enter the season on the NHL lineup, and hasn't seen a single game this year. I don't even think he's been recalled to sit in the box or anything. It's been just an AHL year for him. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I haven't really looked into it. I just look at the name and go, that's someone who played at the NHL last year. Sure, he didn't meet expectations, but it's not like he was downright bad and unusable. Going into next season, I would love to know where he stands, and is he another guy that is just being pushed to the back of the bus thanks to the likes of Danton Heinen or whoever else, decides to enter this lineup?
Yeah, as of right now, you look at Valtteri Puustinen, he has 31 points in 39 games with the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton Penguins, 12 goals. He has played 10 games at the NHL level, has 1 goal, 1 assist. Those obviously came very early.
Yeah, I missed those.
Back when Lars Eller was still on this team, which feels like years ago.
Yeah. I missed the hell out of those, but that happens after a long season of, in comparison to, it's basically nothing compared to what he did last year.
I mean, he played over 50 games last season.
Yeah, and it's surprising. It is surprising to me, at least, that he didn't get more chances. But again, I mean, at this point, like I keep saying, what does this team have to lose? I don't know. I just don't know what they think of him anymore. It's always seemed like they spoke highly of him. It always seemed like they wanted him to do well and to play at the NHL level. They just didn't give him much of a chance this year, and we'll see where he stands amongst these prospects. He's not necessarily a prospect anymore, but Isn't far removed from them, especially age-wise, and I think he would be and could be a key piece to a young roster if that's the direction that the Penguins decide to go next year.
Let's finish off this episode by getting in the Wayback Machine. Now, I talked about it a little bit yesterday, but the Pittsburgh Penguins are heading to Sweden in 2025. They will play 2 games, one on November 14th, the second on November 16th in Stockholm, Sweden, at I believe it's called Avicii Arena. I might be wrong with that, but
no, you're right. That's it. That's the one.
But they'll go up against the Nashville Predators, the first time that they've been playing international hockey since 2008, 2009, where they played, in Stockholm, Sweden. Now, if you look back at those games in October of 2008, like I said, the Wayback Machine at this point. Sidney Crosby was in his 3rd season, 4th season, something like that. The only players that remain from those teams are Sidney Crosby, Kris Letang, and Evgeny Malkin. Now, Marc-Andre Fleury is playing on a different team. Jordan Staal is playing on a different team, but those are the only 3 that remain with the Pittsburgh Penguins. My question to you here is, if you could choose one other player from that lineup, pick him out of 2008 and just drop him into the lineup here in 2025, who would it be?
So I did pick a couple of names just because this isn't an easy one. Also because the Penguins currently just need that much help. And I'm going to start with possibly the easiest choice, and you could probably question it because he is still playing, and that is Marc-Andre Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
Young Fleury, going on to win the Stanley Cup that season. Fleury, was a monster in the net. Playing damn near every game, pretty much 2 seasons prior, being a consistent face between the pipes for the Penguins. What more needs to be said about Marc-Andre Fleury that hasn't already been said a gazillion times on this podcast, let alone everywhere around Pittsburgh? Just the current state of the Penguins is they need steady goaltending, and Marc-Andre Fleury, even in 2008, brought that.
Yeah, especially in the regular season. Now, the playoffs, 2008 playoffs, which is what he was coming off of when they went to Sweden, and the 2009 playoffs, is a good Fleury.
Mm-hmm.
Good playoff Fleury. If we were talking 2010 playoffs, 2011 playoffs, 2013 playoffs, where he got benched for Tomas Vokoun, maybe it's a different story. But regular season Marc-Andre Fleury, like Stockholm, Sweden, early 2008 Fleury, yeah, that's exactly what the Penguins need right now. We saw in the last week what good goaltending does, even for a bad team. It can kind of mask a lot of mistakes. So I agree with you. Fleury should certainly be up there. After Fleury, the first name that popped into my head, and again, we're going based off of players that were in the lineup in Stockholm in 2008. The next name that popped into my head was Sergei Gonchar. What did we talk about this entire episode? Kolyachonok. Yeah, the left side's a mess, which has given him a chance. And it's good because he's young and he can grow into it. Owen Pickering in the second segment. Yeah, the left side's a mess, which means he might have an opportunity. The only problem is Sergei Gonchar did not play until February of the 2008-2009 season, and he was not on the roster, was not in the lineup, I should say, in Stockholm. So I can't pick Gonchar. I look at the rest of that defense. Brooks Orpik comes to mind because he's one of my favorites, but I'm not sure how well Brooks Orpik would perform in today's NHL. Just his style of player.
That's who I had. That was my other name for what it's worth. If I can just take the mic from you here for a minute, just the shutdown defenseman. Who cares what kind of style he plays compared to the league? He was, regardless of his willingness to throw the body around, he was a solid enough shutdown guy that played the left side. And I believe Gonchar was a right shot. So that kind of...
Gonchar's a lefty.
He's a lefty too. He is a lefty. Well, see how little I know. That's mostly why I picked Orpik, though. Mostly because, yes, he did play in Sweden. By the way, Fleury played both games in a back-to-back in Sweden. Once again, just consistent face. But Orpik, regardless of the physicality, regardless of those sort of things, just a shutdown defenseman, and the Penguins are just much like goaltending, in need of someone regular in the lineup that isn't on the right side and can just play defense, nothing more, nothing less. And that's what Orpik was able to bring then. And late into his career, becoming a 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Mm-hmm. Sorry, 2-time, thanks to the help of the Washington Capitals. So he was still able to bring it his whole career. just a solid face to add to the sort of lineup is something the Penguins could use.
Yeah, it's more so curiosity with me. Not that I'm doubting Brooks Orpik. Listen,
Mhm.
he was one of my favorite players. We did our all-century teams or quarter-century teams for the Penguins, and he was on mine because I like Brooks Orpik that much. And I know he played up until 2019, but the game even between 2019 and now has changed very, very much.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to how that version of Orpik would fare in today's game. Now, it might be well, but I think that's why I look at Jordan Staal as my option here. Like if you're taking Fleury and you're picking Fleury and that's going to be your choice, I'm going to say, all right, who else can I take with the claw from Toy Story? I'm going Jordan Staal because Penguins could use young two-way Jordan Staal. They could use Staal, Cook, and Kennedy version Staal. I mean, you could argue that they could have used him after they traded him, but that's the way the cookie crumbled. But the Penguins could use a Jordan Staal right now. Somebody in the middle of the ice. If you brought him to today's game, I mean, does he supplant 38-year-old Evgeny Malkin on the second line? Like, does he finally get to be the number 2 center on the Penguins with a fully healthy Malkin and Crosby? I don't know. I mean, it's all hypothetical, but I think that they could really utilize a guy with the size and the talent of Jordan Staal at the age of, what was he, 18, 19 years old that season, whatever he was.
Yeah.
But
young. How about that?
Very, very young. But no, I think that would be so much fun to watch that version of Staal come back for today's game.
It's the plant Kevin Hayes, that's for sure.
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah, I think he might even jump over Evgeny Malkin just because Malkin's style and overall game are clearly taking negative steps, but that's what you expect from a 38-year-old who's played a career full of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, I mean, Stahl's still showing that his style of play can still do it at the NHL level today. You kind of have that benefit of being able to see what he's bringing this year to Carolina. Again, as a more of a depth setter, as a bottom 6 center, but as their captain and as their leader,
Mm-hmm.
It is what they rely on, especially now down the stretch again.
Yeah, neither of us took the hero of those games, though. Neither of us said, you know what? Bring in 2-goal Tyler Kennedy. Bring in OT goal Tyler Kennedy and throw him in the bottom 6. I think that's mainly because you see a lot of guys that are like Tyler Kennedy in this lineup. Guys that can score 15 goals a year, but that's about ceiling. I don't want to bash TK, but, compared to some of these other names like Staal, Orpik, Fleury, I think that there's a reason that we went with those guys. But unless you have anything else. Now, again, there is the conversation to be had with Sweden is, will they have Swedes? I've got this sneaking suspicion that Rickard Rakell isn't going anywhere.
That reported price is crazy.
That reported price tells me, yeah, this literally has to be, you need to sell your soul to get Rickard Rakell onto your roster if you're not a member of the Penguins. That to me says, yeah, he should feel pretty safe with this organization, because if they're asking for that at the deadline, they can't take it down too much for the summer, but the chances you're going to get that go down.
You have to take it down.
So it feels like Rakell, I mean, to make his grandparents happy, it feels like he's pretty solid right now. Like as solid as you can be on a Penguins roster that is in flux outside of Crosby, Malkin.
Yeah. If again, all these conversations could change in the matter of a couple of months, depending on what direction Kyle Dubas is trying to take this team. If Rickard Rakell is still on the trade block come this offseason, there's no way that's the price he's getting. What was it like? Did he say 2 first and top prospect?
Yeah, it was like 2 first and Logan Stankoven or something like that. It was ridiculous.
Like straight up, you're not getting that.
No,
straight up, you're not. You may have gotten it during the deadline. You may have, because teams may have gotten desperate, and it has to be one of those teams that is so sure they're going to win the cup this year that their pick doesn't matter and their prospect doesn't matter. That was just a shockingly high price, and I get it. The Penguins do really like Rickard Rakell and what he's brought this year. But I go into next year genuinely thinking, can he bring that again? If he can, then yeah, you're going to want to keep him around for a possible run again. Can he do it again? Unsure, and that's not going to be sure until they all hit the ice again next season.
Can he? Yeah, I have faith that he could do it again if you keep him with Crosby. That's been the conversation his entire tenure in Pittsburgh is, yeah, he's fine with Malkin, but he's great with Crosby. And they continued to say, you know what? No, we need to put somebody else up there with Crosby. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
Put Rickard Rakell with Crosby and leave him there. And
Yeah.
here is your sample size, a full season there, and he has 31 goals. He's leading the team. So, yeah, keep him with Crosby, and I think he can do it. Will he do it remains to be seen. There's a lot of factors, obviously, but he can do it. Yeah, 100% he can do it. But going back to the trade price, that tells you how much they value Rickard Rakell. Yeah. Outside of everything, you can say, oh, they were just trying to take advantage of the market. No, that is the price that they put on Rickard Rakell. And if you're Rakell, I mean, I don't know if he sees those things, but if you hear or get wind of that, you have to feel like, oh, they like me here. Like, that's how much they value me. 2 firsts and a top prospect. I don't like the only player that went for that was Mikko Rantanen. And Mikko Rantanen is a top 5 player in the National Hockey League.
Didn't play like it in Carolina, but yes.
But he didn't want to be in Carolina. If the rumors are true of what he said to Rod Brind'Amour, and again, they are rumors, then yeah, I'm not surprised he didn't perform well as a member of the Hurricanes.
I don't know what he's done since going to Dallas. I haven't looked into it, but I mean, the Rakell one we'll have to see. I still wouldn't be shocked if he does get traded just because the Penguins are in such a flux right now. If he does, it just won't be for that price. And even if Erik Karlsson gets traded, it also will not be for that price at this point. You have to, because that's the other assumption, is that Erik Karlsson might be getting traded this offseason. It's really funny that leading up to the deadline, 2 of the Penguins' top trade assets were Swedes. And then the NHL went, all right, cool, you're going to Sweden. Have fun having none of them on your... Emil Bemstrom might be around.
Nope.
He's playing in Wilkes-Barre, the northeastern PA at that time.
And call him up on an emergency basis. That way he can show the guys around. But Mikko Rantanen, just to close out this episode and this discussion, with Carolina, had 6 points in 13 games. He has 4 points in 5 games with the Dallas Stars. So it seems like a better fit just all around. And whenever, you sign that big contract, get a little jolt as well. But that's going to do it.
The Stars going to win the Cup.
Listen, I've picked them the last 2 years. I might pick them again this year. Who knows? I mean, it's a crapshoot, and I am going to take as much information as possible before I come on in front of a microphone and make a prediction. But the Stars are up there. Stars are certainly up there in the Western Conference. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this one. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe if you enjoy our content, or you can catch us anywhere you get your podcast from. We'll see you guys next time.